I have an experiment to propose. This is potentially an antidote to what I consider a flaw in my teaching in the last couple of years. This wasn't there before. It's some weird thing in the post-COVID times that when I teach Bhujapidasana halfway through the primary series, and then Bakasana B a third away into the intermediate series, I feel like I have not fully prepared people for the specific kind of strength that these postures ask for us, which is weird. It's proprietary Ashtanga strength. It's amazing. And yet for some reason, just in the past couple of years, when I'm getting people to those thresholds, it's hard. And I want it to be less hard. And I have no idea why this wasn't something that was there before. Who knows? I'm mystified. So because of that, and because any change to a vinyasa in my world is such a big deal, this is something I've been experimenting with and considering for a year. And now I feel like I need some other people to help me experiment. So there's a place at the beginning of the seated series where the particular kind of weird strength that a person needs for Bhuja and Bakasana B could really easily be systematically developed. You could prime it in this place in the beginning of the seated series, and then I think if you prime it there, this particular kind of strength might continue to stay with you through your vinyasas of the primary series and then be online when Bhuja and Bakasana B come along. So this weird strength, think about if you practice Bhujapidasana or if you practice Bakasana B, there's something about the engagement of the obliques as well as the intercostals, but inclusive of these two big diaphragms in the thorax, the lower thorax, the pelvic floor, and the actual breathing diaphragm. Somehow all of those have to come together in a super weird way that is very different from how Western bodies approach strength. There's a shared body hexis in any family, in any culture, in any gym or whatever, that tells us how to breathe, how to be strong, how to relax, and whatnot. The paradigmatic example of this that all of you know is when you first learn back bends, and there's an underlying program that tells us to push on an exhale into a back bend. That is just the program of Western culture that says you do hard things on an exhale and you do them from the glutes, which is excellent practice if you're moving boxes up and down stairs or bench pressing, but it's simply not the body logic of what it is that we do. So you get this chance to reprogram. So Bhujapidasana and Bakasana B are two other chances to reprogram how we find core strength. You know that I feel like core strength is such an amorphous term. And whatever it is in the gym, it's certainly not what it is for us, because we do this bandha stuff and we always harness the inhalation to do hard things, right? So this knitting together of the front abdominal strength with the pelvic floor and the breathing diaphragm it really shows up in the shape that, like, the body weight exercise people would call like an L-sit. But we do that exact same shape, just in less obvious ways all over the primary series. And yet, right after that first forward bend of the primary series, I've been doing this for years just because it's fun. But over the last 1 year, what I've been seeing is that it's everything that is really needed for these two hard thresholds in primary and intermediate, okay? So here I've taken Paschimottanasana, right? And instead of just picking up and jumping back, again, this is not part of Ashtanga method at all, which is why I'm so reticent to add it into the way that I teach. But instead of picking up from here and jumping back, without any change to the vinyasa, one could, and I do, engage up here in the obliques, work the diaphragm in this own weird way that has to do with this weird central tendon that runs through your very inner body, lifting the pelvic floor, even with my ultra short arms, right? Super, super short arms. It works to pull the pelvic floor into the diaphragm with this, quote, core strength engage to, I'm gonna place my hands midway along my femur bone. So here's the greater trochanter, the edge of the widest part of my center of gravity. I'm gonna come forward just a hair, maybe a third. Some of you might come halfway up the femur, okay? And for a moment, without losing the aspects of strength that you need to practice a forward bend, come up from here, okay? So these are my super short arms, right? And then from here, take your vinyasa. So the exact same action can also be very seamlessly added in to the exit from Purvottanasana a minute later. So you go through, you take your vinyasa, come through, hands back. Okay, so here we are, you know the count for this. It's inhale, hands back about a foot, come up, right? Then in this moment, rather than just the normal, like set it down, right? Again, my arms are super short, and yet from an integrated engagement of the side body here, diaphragm, pelvic floor, all of it kind of holding me together. Instead, I'm gonna pull the hips back and set it down here, right where I was a second ago, about a third of the way up the femur bone, right? So eventually, as this develops, you might even be able to come back with the feet up. This is kind of what I'm looking for, this, because it's what shows up here, right? And it's what shows up here, for those to make sense. So again, let me show you these two interpretations of the vinyasas. Here we go. After your Paschimottanasana, then, you know, you don't need to have like stupid open hamstrings to this. You can be here too, right? I'm gonna take my hands a little ways up the femur, engage here, integrate that into the inner body, and then maybe just lift here. Over time, maybe a little bit, okay? Wherever you are, then take your vinyasa from there. Second one, after your Purvottanasana, okay, instead of just setting the hips down, come back and set the hips down much further back than is actually required in the terminology and in the etiquette of the vinyasa, simply for the sake of giving yourself the chance to pull the torso towards the leg while keeping the pelvic floor diaphragm and the breathing diaphragm pulling up against each other. I don't want to get any more nerdy than I already have about the anatomy of what's going on there in the inner body. But, you know, we've had these discussions in different ways over the years about your arms. If you believe that you have short arms, the counter move is to shorten the torso. And I also have a super long torso. It's the only super long body part, right? but that action is actually something that happens internally as you learn to pull these two horizontal structures of the diaphragm and the pelvic floor actually in and towards each other through structures that actually connect to themselves, It's a little weird. And so like you do not, under any circumstances, want to overthink an action like this. You don't want to turn it into like a place where you ruminate in the practice or anything that you fixate on at all. What I'm proposing is the tiniest different interpretation of simple, mundane actions in the practice in a way that simply help you feel something happen deep inside the, quote, core of the body that has nothing to do with whatever muscular core has been described to us in the Western canon, along with this side body stuff that enables us to get into there, right? So again, just touching on that, just having this slight interpretive difference on when and how you pick up after that first vinyasa, and when and how you lower down after that second one, I think can help you then to continue to feel that through all the actions that come, so that potentially you're using all the things that you're gonna need twice as much when these very weird instructions come along. If you decide to run this experiment with me, please let me know if you're doing it. Please do not overthink it. Please do not waste mental or physical energy on it. Just make it a slight interpretive, subtle thing. Do it for 1 to 2 months, every single practice. And I would love to, I'll probably just notice if, I'm seeing you all know. But I would love to know how then that affects your idea, your embodied idea of what strength means, but particularly what those two postures are for, Bhuja and Bukasana B. All right.